This is the focus. Ken and the team have asked me to come talk to you about what we've been working on since SolidWorks World, when I talked to you about digital sales and what was happening in that space. And in that short time, a ton of things continue to change. And in the next 30 minutes, I'm going to try to share some of that with you and what we intend to do to help position the people in this room and our resellers to help deal with that. So let's jump into it. I want to start off by defining what is online. We throw that term around. We use online, we talk about cloud, we talk software as a service. You even hear things like platform as a service. So I'm taking an attempt here that it is going to be, when you think about online for the future for us, it's going to be the products like Kishore talked about with XDesign. But it's also going to be the platform where we sell products like DraftSight. It's also going to include things like My SolidWorks and Content Central. So when you think about online, you think about how the industry looks at these things, it's not just a product for sale. And it's especially just not a product for sale in the same way we've always done it. So keep that in mind as we go through this. Now I want to try to focus on sharing really what's the research showing us, what's the trends, and what strategies are we putting together to try to deal with this. Because it's not going to be a new product introduction. This is not going to be, we're going to turn one off and turn one on. This is going to be a transition for everyone in this room as well as for all of our resellers. So we're trying to understand enough of what it is from the experts, from other companies, and then figure out what we do with it. So let's start with, this was alarming to me, and maybe everybody else in the room knew and I didn't, but they've defined this as the end of the technology era. So the top 50 publicly traded technology and services companies, revenue for CapEx spending, so what they're selling out in their space. So when you take Cisco, you take HP, you take Oracle, you take the others, there's been a $37 billion decline in the last 2 years. Tens of billions of dollars are not being spent with their customers at those companies on capital expenditures. I think everybody knows where that money's going. But what was interesting to me is, does that mean it's the end of technology kind of as we know it? And what does that mean, this diminishing spend? Tens of billions of dollars went away and nobody even really talked about it. I found this buried in a book here through the Technology and Services Organization. And really what it means is that customers have gotten more savvy about how they're going to buy. And they're putting more of that burden back on the manufacturers. They're saying, I'm not going to make that big upfront purchase anymore, take on all the risk and liability of that implementation, and then figure it out with you later. They're going to say, I'm going to put as much of that on you as possible, you the vendor, you the reseller, and I'm going to demand that you make this work for me. So keep that in the back of your mind, because that's what's coming our way. And again, it's not here yet, but it's coming in our direction, and we need to prepare for that. That's where the money's gone. This is the top 20 publicly traded cloud technology and services companies. So the good news is, a bunch of them are making money. They're making revenue. They're getting customers onto their solutions. The problem is, it's costing them a fortune to do it. Cloud infrastructure is expensive. Sales and marketing for this is expensive. I'll talk later in the presentation, but the idea of our linear buyer's journey that I talked about even just 8 months ago is now outdated. You need to be talking to these people continuously, where you're measuring your success by touch points and the frequency of those touch points. So keep that in mind, is that even though these companies, with the exception of Viva Systems, and I could spend 20 minutes on these people, if you get a chance, Google them, it's quite outstanding. They may be the only software company that's figured out how to grow without spending more on their infrastructure and their sales and marketing. But these are all names you know. This is Salesforce, this is Workday, these are publicly traded companies. And the more money they make, the more money they're spending. And what you heard from the beginning yesterday from Ken is, we get a path to $1.5 billion. And nobody said we get to spend $1.5 billion to do it. So here's the promise. We want to get back to double-digit growth. We want to get back to the heyday. The SaaS industry across all markets, particularly here in the United States, Western Europe, it's almost a $100 billion opportunity. for people that are willing to spend. And they're saying that, research is saying up through 2019, 15.8, 16% annualized growth is what's expected in that space. So if we get here, there's growth there for us. The question is, are we prepared to be there? I'm not sure we are. The people in this room or our resellers. So I think we got to figure this out, and it's the reason why I think Ken and I and others on the team, along with Chris, have been working about how do we figure out where we go, because this is not, again, it's not just a new product introduction. This is bigger than that. Here's the problem. I spent some time up in Toronto, and I met some amazing people that took Microsoft through their journey. This is the amalgamation of their 1,700 resellers and what it took for them over a 4.5, 5-year period when they transitioned from selling perpetual license software to cloud-only software. Office 365, Dynamics 365, many of you know. So they are completely converted now. They had to defer gratification. They had to invest and wait for the return. And what I learned from some of the experts that helped them, and we're actually going to hire one of them, I think, to probably help us, is it didn't work the first time out with their resellers. They went out and they treated it like a new product introduction. And it failed. And it failed poorly and quickly, and they learned from it, and they jumped back and said, what do we have to do differently? And I'm hoping that we can leverage some of that learning with them for us and for our resellers. So keep that in mind, this deferred gratification, that's the problem. Here's the payoff. And I didn't know about this one until I attended that event. But IDC did a research back in 2014 about the valuation study. What happens to businesses and resellers about the valuation of their business? And it's the first upside that I've seen when we talk about the payoff for moving to the cloud. And basically what this means is that if you get more of your revenue coming from a recurring business, your business is now worth more. So if you're a reseller, that's interesting to you for the first time in a while, because the big challenge for them is, I got to go lose money for a long time so I can make a little money? What's in this for me? I'm not going to go hire anybody to do this. But this is why, both from publicly traded software companies and partner networks like Ingram Micro D and others, is that those that can demonstrate recurring revenue in the cloud business are worth exponentially more. Go to your E-Trade account, your brokerage account, research these companies. You will see this. You'll see companies in the last year that have gone up exponentially just because of this. The test. I'm not sure if Ken told me he didn't want me to put marshmallows out in front of everybody because we'd get them tossed around the room. But this is the marshmallow test. Many of you may have heard of this. It was done in Stanford back in the 60s. And it's a test about deferred gratification. And they took kids between the ages of 4 and 8, and they put a marshmallow in front of them. And they said, if you wait 15 minutes, we'll give you a second marshmallow. Now, this test has been done thousands of times since this, both with children and adults, and the results are the same. 2/3 of the people can't wait. They eat the marshmallow. They eat the Oreo. They eat the pretzel. They can't wait. So now we have talked about what's the difference that's happening in the technology space. We talked about what's it mean from a financial perspective, and now we have to get into the human behavior part of this. We're in a time in society where nobody wants to wait for anything, and the message we have to go give is you got to wait. So we're going to go to put a marshmallow in front of our team and a marshmallow in front of the resellers, and we've got to say, you got to wait and believe us that if we do this right, there's going to be a bunch of other marshmallows on that plate. But keep in the back of your mind, 2/3 of them, because of human behavior, are probably not going to want to wait. So during the study, there was 3 paths that learned about during the Profit Horizon, which was Thomas Law, and I'll share some of the resources. Some of the information and research I've done is really quite amazing, and I'll share those sources with you because if you're interested in this, there's a ton of learning that you can get out of this. But they broke it into 3 areas. That the future, which is companies that are out there like Twitter, and their stakeholders believe that they can wait 5, 6 years, maybe even longer, but they believe in the business that there's going to be money at the end of that. And they're willing to wait for that. And then there's the midterm, so the not so distant, and you recognize some of these companies. AWS is now in there with Amazon's Web Services and Salesforce and Workday. They've shifted from out here back into the middle now. They're going to start to see profitability in the next 3 years or so. And then finally, you get the current. These are often the large public companies. And their shareholders are willing to trade the revenue that they're getting for the valuation they can get today. So they're willing to say, hey, we can make a little less, we can spend a little more if our stock price goes up. They're willing to do that. And we know a couple of examples here with Autodesk as an example, is that by forcing their customers to cloud only, they're allowing that to make it easier for them to both spend less by committing to one platform versus two, and forcing their customers down a path. And all of you in this room know we're not going to do that. We're not going to force people down a path. We want to be customer choice and customer choice sensitive. But this is what reinforces that point. When you look at the growth in the last 3 years for these three companies in share price and market capitalization, Adobe's up 40% in the last 3 years. So from an investment point of view, these companies are worth more. They're more valuable. But they're losing money. And depends on your perspective on what you're willing to do. And the reason why this is interesting isn't about what's happened with the economics of these companies as much as it's about this is the dynamics that you will have to help your resellers through. They need to understand this. And what we're trying to do is put together strategies based on what we've learned to help us and them transition through this. So there's this other book, Consumption Economics, and it is, again, if you get a chance to look at it, it's fantastic. You may not get as excited about this topic as I do, but there was 2 megatrends that they talked about in this particular research, and the first one was commoditization. Whoops. And I know we hate this word. I know everybody hates to think that the differentiation between us and our competitors has diminished. I don't want to believe it, you don't want to believe it, and hell, it may not even be true. But the reality is that consumers start to think about software and hardware purchases as being mostly equal. And we may not like it, but some parts of their perception, and again, their perception is their reality, is that this is a commodity-based product. And we have to figure out how we're going to navigate that. So that's one of the big megatrends that they talk about. The second megatrend that they talk about is customer consumption. So the acceleration of these new consumption models is that people can explore new ways to purchase technology that didn't exist before. We're not talking about a lengthy RFP. We're not talking about a long evaluation, a POC, or proof of concept. We're talking about people trying stuff today. I want to try it right now. I want to try it this afternoon and see if it works for me. And guess what? If it doesn't work for me the way I want in 6 months, I'm going to try somebody else's. That model of how people are getting stuff is changing, and other companies are enabling to do that, and we're going to be there as well. We need to be prepared on how to deal with that. So when you think about this research, like, how do you make any money at this? And this was one of the interesting studies that I bumped into that was, if we continue to just do the basics, if you give them just basically what they need, we're going to struggle. But if you get up to focus on outcome results, what does a customer want? What are they actually trying to get to? They're outcome focused. Everybody wants to get something done in their business. And if you can get to that place, what's been demonstrated by Salesforce and others is that if you start them with a basic functionality feature capability, is that over time, through their products and their partner products, they'll continue to spend more and more and more. And that's where the money's at. So we have to get good at this. We have to put some strategies together to figure out how to do this, and we have to understand what the end game is. And I suggest that what Kishore and I think Jean-Paul talked about as well is that when we think about process bundles and solutions, I think their focus is exactly where this is, which I think will be perfect for us and for our customers. So what are we doing about it? We've put together some infographics that I'll share. I'm going to take you through one of them today, but I'll share with you if anybody wants them. But they're strategies to help us through this transition, both for you, for your team, and for the resellers.